Stop. Just stop for a second. Before this video ends, somewhere in the world, food will be used to pressure a nation. A shipment will be delayed, a payment will be blocked, an export will be restricted, and most of us will never notice. Because the most powerful weapon of the 21st century doesn't explode, it doesn't whistle through the sky, it doesn't leave smoke or rubble. Sometimes it shows up quietly, as an empty shelf. Right now, as you hear my voice, close to 800 million people are asking the same question. What will I eat tomorrow? And here's the part that should make you uncomfortable. This is not a failure of farming. It's not because the earth can't produce enough food. Humanity already grows more than enough to feed everyone alive today. So why does hunger keep spreading? Because food is no longer just food. Food is leverage. Food is influence. Food is power. For most of human history, conquest followed a simple rule. You didn't need to destroy a city to defeat it. You only needed patience. Cut off the food. Wait. Eventually, hunger would open the gates. That ancient logic never disappeared. It simply scaled up. Today, sieges aren't fought around castle walls. They're fought across oceans, through trade routes, inside banking systems, through policies signed far away from the people who feel their consequences. The battlefield is global now, and every dinner plate sits at its edge. This is the story of how food became an invisible weapon, and how the stability of your next meal is tied to decisions made thousands of miles away. At first glance, the global food system looks like a miracle. Wheat grown in the American Midwest feeds families across Africa. Rice harvested in Asia ends up in kitchens in the Middle East. Supermarkets overflow with choices that would have seemed impossible just a century ago. It feels permanent, reliable, safe. But this entire system rests on something fragile: trust. Every country depends in some way on the harvests of others, and every government shares the same non-negotiable priority: keep your people fed. Because when food prices rise, history tells us exactly what follows: protests, instability, revolutions. So when harvests shrink or prices spike, governments act fast. They restrict exports, they stockpile grain, they pull up the drawbridge. On paper, this looks reasonable. A domestic decision, protection. But in a connected world, there is no such thing as a purely domestic food policy. When a major exporter suddenly stops selling abroad, global markets react instantly. Importing countries panic, prices surge, supply chains tighten. A single announcement can raise the cost of bread for millions overnight. This is the first layer of food as a weapon, the export ban. It's not aimed at an enemy. It doesn't need to be. It sends a shockwave. It exports inflation. It exports anxiety. And it exposes a truth most of us don't like to think about. Modern societies depend on a very small number of food gates, and someone controls them. Alongside export bans sits a quieter, more deliberate form of power: strategic reserves. Some countries maintain enormous stockpiles of grain, modern fortresses of food, not just for emergencies, but for endurance. When global prices spike, nations with deep reserves can wait. They release grain slowly. They stabilize their markets. They outlast the storm. Endurance becomes leverage. In a prolonged crisis, the country that can feed itself the longest doesn't panic. It negotiates. Let me be clear. In the 21st century, food security is national security, and the race to secure it is accelerating. But food isn't only weaponized through supply, it's weaponized through money. Modern food trade runs on an invisible architecture: banks, insurance firms, shipping companies, payment systems. Without them, food doesn't move. This is where the modern siege really begins. Instead of blockading ports with warships, countries can block access to finance. They freeze assets. They sever banking links. They impose sanctions that turn every transaction into a risk. Officially, food is often exempt. In reality, fear spreads faster than clarity. Banks don't want the liability. Insurers don't want the exposure. Shipping companies don't want the trouble. So they step away. Food exists. Buyers exist. But the bridge between them collapses. Prices soar. Currencies weaken. Shelves empty. Not because crops failed, but because the system around food stopped working. This is a financial siege. No tanks, no blockades, just silence and paperwork. At the same time, food can be used as something else entirely, a bargaining chip. Throughout modern history, nations have used grain sales and food aid to build influence. Reliable food partnerships create loyalty. Emergency shipments stabilize fragile governments. Long-term supply deals quietly shape political alignments. The promise of bread opens doors. The threat of losing it closes them. Food diplomacy rarely makes headlines, but it changes outcomes. And nowhere did all of this collide more clearly than in Ukraine. To understand how dangerous this weapon really is, we have to watch it in action. Ukraine. 2022. Before the war, Ukraine was one of the world's most critical breadbaskets. It soil-fed countries across Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. Global markets depended on its harvests. Then the invasion began, and suddenly food became a front line. Naval blockades trapped millions of tons of grain in Black Sea ports. Silos filled. Ships stopped moving. Each passing week tightened global supply. Prices climbed. Uncertainty spread. Agricultural infrastructure turned into strategic targets. Ports, rail lines, storage facilities. This wasn't just about territory, it was about supply. But here's the strategic twist. This wasn't only about stopping food, it was about weaponizing its absence. By creating a global shortage, hunger itself could be turned into political pressure, and the effects traveled fast. Countries dependent on Black Sea grain felt it almost immediately. Import bills exploded. Governments rushed to subsidize bread. Stability began to wobble. A war in Eastern Europe became a dinner-table crisis across continents. In places where bread is life, price spikes are dangerous. They strain governments. They fuel unrest. For the first time in decades, the ancient equation was visible to the entire world. Control the grain, and you can shake the world. The crisis forced urgent diplomacy. After intense negotiations, temporary corridors were opened. Ships began moving again. It was a reminder that food could still be used as a tool for cooperation, not just coercion. But it was also a warning. Because the system didn't break, it revealed its weakness. When one breadbasket is disrupted, the consequences ripple everywhere. And Ukraine was only one example. Beyond wars and sanctions lies another battlefield, quieter but just as powerful. Control over the foundations of agriculture itself. Modern farming depends on a delicate web of inputs: fertilizers, seeds, energy, technology, data. Disrupt any one of them, and yields fall. Fertilizers are a perfect example. They are essential to modern agriculture. When supplies tighten, farmers everywhere suffer, costs rise, harvests shrink. A shortage in one region can reduce food production across the globe. Then there's shipping. Food trade depends on affordable transport and insurance. When ports clog, routes close, or premiums spike, food slows down. Delays become shortages, shortages become panic, and then there is land. Over the past few decades, wealthy nations and investment funds have quietly acquired vast areas of farmland abroad. The crops are grown locally and shipped home. For investors, it's food security. For host countries, it raises hard questions. Who controls the land? Who controls the water? And who benefits when food leaves during a crisis? Layered on top of everything is climate change, rising temperatures, unpredictable rainfall, extreme weather. Harvests are becoming less reliable. Breadbaskets are becoming riskier. As uncertainty grows, governments become more protective. Export bans become more tempting. Competition intensifies. At the same time, a new arms race is unfolding, not with weapons, but with technology. Drought-resistant seeds, vertical farming, lab-grown proteins, precision agriculture. These innovations promise resilience. But they also concentrate power, because the future of food may belong to whoever controls the patents, the data, and the infrastructure. All of this leads to a contradiction at the heart of modern life. Food is the most human thing we share. Every culture gathers around meals. Every family depends on it. Yet the systems that deliver food are shaped by strategy, competition, and control. We live inside a vast network where decisions made in distant offices ripple through grocery aisles. A drought here, a sanction there, a blockade somewhere else. Most of the time the system holds, shelves stay stocked, prices fluctuate, but life goes on until suddenly it doesn't. Moments of crisis pull the curtain back. They show how thin the line is between abundance and anxiety, how fast stability can unravel, and how food, the foundation of society, can be turned into pressure. We track missiles, we monitor armies, we analyze energy markets. But who is auditing the wheat stockpiles? Who is stress testing the food supply chains that keep cities calm? Because the next global crisis may not start with a gunshot. It may start with rising prices, empty shelves, and silent panic spreading through markets. So the next time you sit down to eat, pause for a moment. That meal is the end point of a long journey. Fields, factories, ships, ports, contracts, negotiations, a fragile choreography of cooperation and conflict. Because the ancient siege never ended. It evolved. And the ultimate test of our time won't be whether we can feed the world. It will be whether we can stop ourselves from using food to break it.